All right. Welcome. Good evening, everyone. My name is Charlotte Kelly. I'm from the Pennington Public Library, and tonight our talk is titled Organized Like an Archivist, Taming Genealogy, Records, and Research. Before we begin, if you have any questions during the program for our presenter, please write them in the Q&A section, and I will share them with her at the end of the program. And then feel free to place any other comments or questions in the chat window, and I will check them out there. Our presenter this evening is archivist, librarian, and genealogist Nancy Lowe. She has been helping researchers with their family trees since 1977. Nancy specializes in U.S. and European family history research, holding dual master's degrees from the Catholic University of America in American history and library science with a specialization in archives administration. And from her time interning at the Smithsonian Archives as a grad student to her current work as a genealogist working with primary sources has been her life's work. And in addition to appearing on PBS and the Travel Channel, she presented at Roots Tech, the National Genealogical Society, and conferences and webinars in the US, Canada, and Australia. Nancy's genealogy ebooks and free monthly newsletter are available at her website at sassyjanegenealogy.com. Good evening, Nancy, and welcome.
Hello, hello. I am delighted to be with all of you this evening. This is one of my favorite presentations to do because I think a lot of genealogists find themselves in this situation where you have a lot of paper. So I'm going to go ahead and put my slide deck up, and we can get underway. So it sounds like my mother wrote that biography. I'm going to have to update that so it doesn't sound quite so, so ridiculous. But anyway, like I said, I'm very glad to be with you. I think all of us, especially with the flood of information that we contend with, get overwhelmed from time to time. And so what I would like to do is propose a system that can help you manage your records and your research. And so we're going to start out tonight with top organizing concepts that archivists use every day. We're going to talk about the 6 folders that belong in the master genealogy folder, linking your paper and digital records, and ensuring that your data is secure. And everything that I'm talking about, there aren't a lot of URLs, or maybe even any, but the handout is something that you can step through with me. So after this is done, instead of just this 1-hour fire hose and then I disappear, you do have the handout. Come and join me. I have a free monthly newsletter where I talk about records and research and organization. And if you want to know more, go into more depth, there is an ebook. So before we get underway, I am a firm believer in done is better than perfect. If you would talk to my staff before I retired, they could say it before I would. So what works for you out of the ideas that I am about to share with you is what is important. There are no archives police. No one is going to come and ring your doorbell and accuse you of changing any of the concepts that I'm about to talk to you about. I just want to make sure you don't feel like you're drowning in this lake. You don't have to get to the top of the mountain. So why is it that we are so overwhelmed? So we have, in the past, there were just paper records. I was talking to Charlotte before we began and said in 1977, of course, pre-internet, we would unlock the doors after people had watched Roots on TV and they were lining up. It was wonderful to have people that excited about coming to the library. And then they would rush to secure a microfilm reader. So it really was paper-based. We sold pedigree charts and family group sheets that you would have to hand letter. Then, fortunately, with personal computing, family tree software took over a lot of the data capture and made it a lot easier to manage the information that you gather as you research. And then, of course, digitization came along, and suddenly you have paper records and digital records and photos and notes about sources and all kinds of things. And then today, this is why we're overwhelmed. There are sites where you can share information, share trees, compare DNA. You can do genealogy research on your phone. I'm too old for that because I can't see anything that tiny. But apps, blogs, I just invited you to my newsletter. You're here at this very webinar tonight because this is something that I think is of interest to us all. So instead of feeling that overwhelmed feeling, uh, I believe that it is possible to tame the records and research that you found. There are three kinds of genealogy information. The hub for all of this is going to be your family tree software, whether you use Roots Magic or Reunion or Legacy. It is the hub, and it's where all the information that you have gathered is put into what is really just a big database with a nice graphic user template on top. And then, of course, there are the paper records that some of us are lucky enough to have inherited a lot of family records and photographs. It, again, feels overwhelming, but it really is a marvelous thing. And then there are all these digitized records that we're downloading. So this really is about how to get all these different kinds of information to work together. And my first soapbox that I would like to get on is about owning your own data. And that is because I encounter, especially these days, all too many genealogists who only have an online tree, whether it's at Family Search or WikiTree or Ancestry or MyHeritage. All of your information, when you only have an online tree, is really in the hands of that company. And if they decide to change the terms or you don't want to renew anymore, they'll happily keep the tree, but the records and your access to them are done. So I want you to download and save every record you find. You're going to have a system that you can put it in. And if you want, let's say your tree is at Ancestry, both Roots Magic and Family Tree Maker now sync, and it's very stable. And so you can have a tree online. I'm not saying don't share, but that's what the function is. Own your own records that you find. You paid for them, you need to save them. So if someone will help me down from my first soapbox, I remember a few years ago I was at NGS, and someone who I know because he reads my newsletter and blog, he came up and he goes, I have to ask you this. Is it okay for me to download a record I find on Ancestry? I was like, yes, yes, yes. So in the upper right-hand window, when you look, it gives you usually three choices. Save the person to your tree online. By all means, do that. And when you save the record to a person in your tree, it's not importing that record. It's just making a link that Ancestry can sever if you don't renew. Again, they're happy to keep your tree up because it just adds to the body of information that they sell subscriptions about. But at the same time, I also want you to save it to your computer. If you decided not to renew, then you would always have this particular record that you found. And the trick is being able to link those downloaded records with your family tree. So why should you trust archivists? And the answer is we've been dealing with historical records for a long time. Uh, Archives usually hold only primary source material that's original, one of a kind, the very substance of the kinds of records that you use every day you do research on your family tree. We go out in the field. I've been up in bell towers. I've been on ranches. There was an environmentalist who her house was just paper from one end to the other. And I looked in the oven because that usually is where you will find more paper. And sure enough, there was paper in her oven, but there were also papers that, we needed to take care of in the slots of her toaster. So we encounter these kind of chaotic situations because we're getting records and resources from people who are not archivists, who are zeroed in on their environmental work or their architecture or their family history. And so it comes in and looks like this, and then it's a happy day in the archives when it looks like that. I personally find this photo from the basement level somewhere, probably more than one basement, for the Library and Archives Canada. This is the National Archives of Canada. And what I find comforting about this is just beautifully run. They have compact shelving, everything's nice and clean, and everything is stored and housed and preserved and labeled. When I do my Think Like an Archivist, we talk about how to understand what's in those collections. But for now, let's just borrow the top 5 ideas that archivists use every single day. Beware of any kind of elaborate system. Again, if you want to share, if it makes you happy to color code different lines, that's great. But in order to download and organize your digital records, arrange your paper records, you don't need color coding. You don't need special binders, fancy labels, nothing. And if you're repeating information here that really does belong in the hub, which is your tree, you're just robbing yourself of research time. So I'm sure Al Gore could lay his hands on anything in this office. I This kind of place gives me hives. And I have to say, when I see desktops that look like this, I also get hives. It also makes your computer run slower, by the way. But as my husband is fond of pointing out, not everyone manages information. So I'm here to tell you that a filing system is what you need because things that don't have a place to go end up mounted on the desk. If your dining room table is the first flat surface, think about all the things that mount up there. But the important part of this is you also need a retrieval system. Far too often, we find people who filed everything, but they didn't set down what the hierarchy or the organizing principles were. And so they still can't find their stuff. So we're going to talk about filing and retrieval. And it's a fact of life that every archives has a backlog, every single one. I think by the time I retired, the statistic was that any university archives had about a third of its material ready for research. So in order for you, again, not to steal time from your research, if you do things once, scan things once, know where that file is, not have to constantly rearrange or find a mystery box of paper. At my prom back in the dark ages, um, this was like the popular theme in high schools all across the country. So think about it this way. Pretend as if this is your only chance to arrange this material. The other thing that we hear a lot is that scanning means you've preserved something. But I think we have all encountered format obsolescence, how many of us had zip drives back in the 90s, How many of us had floppy disks, the 5 1/4s, or I forget what these were, the 2 1/3s. I don't even remember anymore. Um, we've had hard drives give out. Um, I used to volunteer at the local LDS Family Search Center, and people would come in with very, very, very old computers running very, very, very old software. And so all of that information was not preserved because software ages, usually like milk in the sun. You have to stay up to date. And then, of course, there's just your old data corruption where something opened yesterday and it isn't opening today. But if there is just one idea that you take away from our time together tonight, it would be, and imagine like a David Letterman drum roll here, be consistent. Choose what it is that works for you, but then apply your organizing principles consistently. Let's take a look at what that means. In library speak, controlled vocabulary is a way that information is expressed consistently. And genealogists are already usually doing this. We know that you say Chicago, Cook, Illinois, USA, smaller to largest. Usually in research that I've seen, best practices, genealogists who know what they're doing, they don't say 7651 and then say 6751. The standard here, the best practice, is this kind of military / European style, where you go again from the smallest to the largest. So if you're already doing those things, you're using controlled vocabulary. And in order to extend this notion and make all of your information retrievable, it's important to use consistent punctuation and abbreviations, consistent data entry into your trees, consistent file names for the records that you find. I'm on a Mac. I use several different programs. Reunion is probably the most popular. It's Mac only. And I was actually um, both amused and horrified when I opened up the sample tree that they include in their software. I think you can see from the places that are listed that this is the Kennedy family that they're using as their sample family. But they're misusing their own software by not putting things in consistently. You wouldn't think one small period in an abbreviation could create this much havoc, but if you enter it one way and then a different way, you end up with two Bostons, and we all know there's only one. There are two Brooklines here, there's only one. Cape Cod Hospital in Hyannis is not a geographic location, right? It's an institution. And then coupled in inconsistent ways with the geographic location. Um, again, just pure punctuation. This one doesn't even have a county, but I think probably the most concerning here is that they're abbreviating dates. And one of my rules that I made for myself is that I don't abbreviate states. And that makes Massachusetts much easier to find than searching for MA. So let's say that you have found some records and you have attached them to your online tree and it's time to download them. Every single computer system, every single archives just has, every scanner has just kind of an image 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or image and a timestamp. So it's important for you to rename those files into things that are retrievable and consistent. So when I find a birth record, it's going to be the last name of the baby, the first name, and birth tells me what kind of record this is. So here is Jane Addams, who is born, and I know I have a birth record for her. So a marriage record would be the surname of the groom, the maiden name of the bride, and marriage lets me know that I have either a certificate or a register, some specific record relating to marriage. Um, and so Jane has married George Ross. And so her first marriage is Ross Adams' marriage. In of the fullness of time, when her obituary runs in the paper and you download it, you choose the name the person is using at the time the record is created. So at death, her name was Jane Ross. If it helps you, you can always say Ross Jane Addams obit. I like to keep it as simple as possible so I don't have to remember a lot of rules. If, like me, you have many ancestors named the same, I mean, I think it's one of the reasons I wish they would invent time travel so you could go back and have a chat with your ancestors. I happen to have 3 different Ross families in Rossshire in the Highlands, and they marry each other. And the bride and the groom's parents both are George and Mary Ross. So I have quite a few Ross marriages, and the only reason I add a date is to distinguish them from each other. If I added dates for all these other events, I'm duplicating information that's already in the tree and making it harder for me to search to see if I have a record or not. So when you are creating these rules, and these are just mine, you can name them any way you like. I also am from the Stone Age in terms of computer names where you could only have so many characters. And frankly, I'm too old to learn how to put hyphens and spaces and things in. But if you find that hard to read, you can create your own rule for what you want the name of the file to be. Just don't make it too complicated and always use it consistently. I decided in my cheat sheet, a reminder list, authority file, whatever it is you want to call it, I would spell out avenue, I would spell out mount. I definitely would spell out saint and street so that again, I can search and retrieve. And then here are different decisions that I've made for what I name any birth certificate I find, any baptism record, any death record. Most of my family are immigrants who lived in Chicago. And so I have hundreds of those little 1-inch death notices that would appear in big metropolitan papers. I have almost no obituaries. I don't have land records because they lived in tenements and did sweatshop work. Your family is going to be different, and I want you to think about the kind of records that you have already and make up your authority file. And always spell out your states. So in the second part of this webinar, I wanted to talk about where you put all those great files that you either already have or you're about to find. I create one master folder on my computer. Actually, I put it in Dropbox, and every single bit of my research happens to be in Dropbox so that I can travel and be anywhere in the world and still get into all of my research. Comes in very handy when you pull up at an archives in Scotland and realize you forgot a key piece of information. In this master folder, there are 6 other folders. And this is where this system departs from all the other many systems there are for organizing genealogy research. And this is not usual, but I find it works very well. I organize the records I find by the record type because the file name gives me a surname list. So the first of these 6 files is what I consider an administrative or administration folder. And into this goes everything about doing genealogy research. If you have this set up and you have that handout that you've downloaded, here is the place it would go. If there are forms, because you're dealing with some county that still makes you mail things in, download that form once and keep it. Scan those IDs that accompany these mail requests so that you only do it once and you know where this is. We'll skip over invoices and receipts because you don't want to really add up how much you spend doing this, but there's a place to park things. If you're doing projects on My Canvas, you could put all of that information there and know what it is, what the images were, what you said. Some of this is just professional folders that I use. As an educator and a writer on genealogy topics. I used to refer to record templates all the time. I would download each of the sample forms for the federal census, state censuses, in case the microfilm to digitization made it all blurry and I couldn't read what those headings were. Now, Ancestry and I think Family Search too have like these little pop-up tooltips that tell you what that text is. So this used to be important, maybe not so much anymore. Information about trips, where I'm going, or the name of the archives or the cemetery, or information, hotel reservations, whatever it is that I hope we all are out there soon doing. If you've made requests and you want to keep track of them, if you've joined social media, here is a place to put all the names of all of your social media accounts. I think that there probably is a society that the public library works closely with. I belong to societies in Scotland, in Germany, and in different states where my family lived. So it isn't just, oh, hey, I live in Pennington, so now I'm going to join the county society. Think about what societies and libraries can do for you. If you volunteer, this is where to park it. Nothing in this first folder is any of the actual research itself. It's just about doing research. So again, it doesn't matter what kind of family tree programs you're using. Common ones are Legacy, Reunion, Family Tree Maker, and I make a folder for those databases so I know where they are. And in some cases, the software wants to write to a certain directory or area on your hard drive. And if that is the case, don't move it from where it installed itself. Just make a shortcut or an alias, something that can get you back to where all your family tree data is ensconced in your family tree software. The family photos, we're just going to hit the highlights. This is actually a whole separate presentation, and we'll go into it in a bit. But in general, I divide up my family photos between the quick and the dead. So if I make trips to cemeteries, when I come back, I upload them by year and then by location. So all those masters are right there. I have paid talented people to restore family photos. This is what I've done and what the results were. All of us get interrupted when we're scanning and we have scans we need to come back and name. And at any time, if you're about to share these, you can duplicate these master files that are kept chronologically and by location, name them after whoever it is and their surname, and then you have things that you can upload or share. So I said that this is a whole separate presentation on how to manage your family photos. There is a whole superstructure, really, of information that makes documents searchable. Everyone in libraries, archives, the big commercial sites uh, are using metadata. Metadata just means data about data. Tonight, when you sit down to watch TV and your online program guide comes on and it says, this is a vintage episode of Hawaii Five-0 from 1965, and it has Steve Lord and Dano, and it's 48 minutes long, and this is here and that's there. That is not the program itself that you would watch. It's just information about the program. And there are software packages that let you, in essence, tag your family photos, names, dates, places, and then that photo becomes searchable. And you don't have to rely on specific file names for family photos. This is the only time I'm going to tell you that a file name doesn't matter. And as you can see, it learns as it goes. Programs like this have visual recognition, and it starts sprinting ahead and says, hey, I've seen this guy before. Is this who this is? And you say, why, yes, it is. Is this my Swedish great grandmother? Yes. And it really is pretty cool. And again, the whole idea is not for you to just scan and file your photos, but make them retrievable too. It's pretty simple. It's just like any kind of software where you add information. You can wax on like I did because I know a lot about this photo. It usually will geolocate for you. I think this is Adobe software, and I think they were arguing with Google, but I think that's been fixed. Um, and so all this software, you can put as much or as little as you like in. And as long as you separate names with semicolons, again, it becomes searchable. The fourth of the 6 folders in that master genealogy folder are primary sources. As I said, I arrange all of my research first by the kind of record. And again, every family is unique. So I have hundreds of death notices, not quite so many land and property. I don't have a lot of military service in my family. You might have so much that you would have subfolders for them. But when I thought about all the kinds of records I had, and frankly, when I decided to start doing it this way, I was appalled at myself as someone who made a living managing organization. I had so many duplicate files and so many files that, I thought, well, I'm going to put it in the surname folder here and the other surname over here. And this person got married twice, so I'm going to have another folder there. Once I just decided that I was filing first by record type, and again, consistent file names so that I could search my whole hard drive, everything started to come together. And when you open up a records subfolder, you get your surname list anyway. So as you can see, oh, I have 2 little clinkers. I need to change that slide. Somehow, I think what's happening here is these are birth and baptism records. So anything that actually is a baptism, anything that I have translated from usually German or Norwegian or Swedish, all of that goes into a specific subfolder for that type of record. We talked earlier about the groom and the bride and marriage being how you would name a marriage record that you find, and only add dates to distinguish from couples with the same name. And again, when you open this folder, it becomes that surname list that is so important. I sometimes, just to entertain myself, search like my Ross family. I have many, many, many records. And up pops this list of every single kind of record that I have about a Roth in my genealogy and my hard drive of my whole computer. So you could look at it that way. You can structure searches. You can not, you don't have to look up what you think you would have named it because, again, you have those controlled vocabulary consistently named file rules. The fifth out of the six folders are, again, different record templates that are hard to read, mostly research about specific places, ships that my immigrants came over on, research that I've done in specific states, information about archives or hours. This is all on the history of the places. It's very important. Maps can go in here. Um, in Germany, of course, it turns out I had no Germans, I had Prussians. And so you save information about places in your tree. When you download one of those published family histories that you find for your surname or a county local history, now you have a place to put that ebook. It's a secondary source in your secondary sources folder and ebooks. I don't know about you, but when someone does actually share information with me, I wall it off because I want to look at it and see what they've done and if their research looks reliable. So that to me, again, is a secondary source, and I put it in that folder. This leaves that sixth folder. This is where you get surnames, but it's really more of kind of a notes folder. I've saved things like eulogies or notes for eulogies that were written, questions that I have asked family members for interviews so that I can perhaps reuse those again. So this is the place where you create uh, subfolders by surname. This is where you can put in information about the etymology of the name, where it came from, anything about that particular surname. And again, use the person's name at the time the record was created. Your family tree will tell you if a woman was married 3 times. So if you know that your rule is to use the name of the person as it was recorded in that record, then you're always going to have your information. So if we go back to the 3 kinds of genealogy information, the family tree software, the digital records that you've downloaded and named or scanned, the paper records that we all still have, and then you think about your sources and citations. This is how you're going to link paper and digital records. When I found a particular downloaded record, I named it with my consistent naming rules, but I also, in my sources in my family tree, created what amount to the different documents. Just take these right off those subfolders for bands or baptisms or property records and create this as a generic source for that kind of record, but then record what the name of that file is. So this way, I have the microfilm number that I found this on a long time ago. This is about geographic information. This is the Polish archives and their system of indexing information. So I have all the sources for this fact and this place for this person, and I have the digital record that I found. After you scan paper records or photos that you have, write your consistent digital file name on the back lightly in pencil. This way, anytime you find a paper record and you turn it over, you'll know whether or not you have scanned it. Then add that digital file name, as we were just looking at, to your source and citation software on your family tree. If it is a record you don't intend to scan or you haven't gotten to, your source is, your citation is paper record in the 2-drawer filing cabinet in the second drawer in this folder. So you can always retrieve what you filed, whether it's physical or digital. And now I need help up on my soapbox. Once again, it is time to make sure that your data is secure. It used to be pretty popular. I think it subsided somewhat, where different genealogists would say, it's the first of the month and it's time for you to back up your family history research. And it makes my blood run cold. I don't know about you, but in a month, I could do a lot of work. And the day before the end of the month, if that system failed or there was corruption or any of those other things we've talked about, I would lose a month's worth of work. So you don't want to have yourself be the weakest part of your data security. You need to automate it with software so that you set it and forget it. And you need a two-pronged approach because you don't get to choose what kind of disaster your data might have. So pick any two of the following two things. You need a cloud service and you need a local external hard drive. Now, the cloud just means that there are companies who run these vast server farms located in all over the world in different redundant locations. So if there was a flood somewhere or an earthquake, their cloud backup would still have another copy somewhere else. So all this is a way of saying you have hired a company whose sole job in life is to back up your information, your entire computer, to the cloud in an encrypted way. Companies that you may have heard of include CrashPlan, Carbonite, Backblaze. It depends on how much data you have, but when you think about how much of our lives we lead online, financial records, in addition to all that, the hours and hours of family history research, it's great to me to give CrashPlan $10 a month, and then it's their job to do this. I have a few other things to do. I know you do too. So having someone, a company whose sole reason is to keep your data in redundant multiple locations, not attached to your house, is great. You also need a redundant backup. And that is when you go to Costco or Amazon or Best Buy, wherever it is you would like to go, and you buy an external hard drive. When we were doing an NEH grant and we were digitizing huge amounts of material, but it really was kind of the earliest days of digitizing. And we decided we wanted a terabyte drive so that every day we could run our own backup in addition to the library's backup. And it cost us $5,000 to buy 1 terabyte hard drive. 5,000. You can go to Costco tonight and get 8 terabytes for $130. So I don't think cost is a barrier anymore. So that local external hard drive and the automated backup software just runs in the background. In the Mac OS, it's called Time Machine, and Windows, it's called File History. This is how easy it is to set up. Here is that new external drive you bought. You choose it, and then it starts running. The first time it does a backup, it's going to take it a long time, whether it's the cloud or a local drive. because it's copying everything. After that, the software takes over and only backs up what has changed. If you don't want to use ones that are built into your operating systems, there's a company called Paragon that makes software called Backup and Recovery. So we have crossed the finish line. My husband found this for me. He thinks it's highly amusing, possibly because I keep going in and alphabetizing his spices, which to me is the only logical way to do this. Um, so I hope that you have CDO just like I do. I hope that this included some information that can help you tame all those records and research. Organized Like an Archivist is the companion ebook. I go into much greater detail, step-by-step instructions, links to different companies. You can download it for $9.99 at my little bookshop on my website. And now I'm going to turn it back to Charlotte so that she can get to your question.
Yes, thank you so much, Nancy. So we do have a few questions here. First one's from Douglas. He says, regarding downloading files from Ancestry, when you upload an entire tree from Ancestry, do you know if the source files get saved/downloaded as well, or does each document need to be downloaded individually?
If I'm understanding your question, you're saying if you have a tree on your desktop and you upload it to Ancestry, does it import all the files that you have? And the answer to that lies with what type of software you choose. I believe if it is either Roots Magic or Family Tree Maker, it does sync all those records and creates what's called a media file in your Family Tree software with all of those images. If they are images you found on Ancestry, again, if you don't renew, those records go away. The family photos or other records that you had and digitized yourself would stay in that tree.
Okay. The next question is, it says, you seem to save files as JPEGs. Why not PDFs? How do you handle a file that is multiple pages long when using a JPEG?
Well, the difference in file formats, I think, is an important one. Anything that is visual, an image, a drawing, motion pictures, whatever it is, if it's visual, there are a host of different kinds of image formats. I advise that you, when you're scanning, um, save them in TIFFs at least 300 DPI. If you ever want to share it with someone, you can knock that down to a JPEG, which is a smaller file. Pixels drop out. Sometimes it's enough that the naked eye can see it. That's why I like TIFF, because they're the most stable. There are what are considered lossless. So JPEGs are for sharing images, and GIFs, what other kind of image file formats. PDFs are textual. Once you create a PDF, unless you pay Adobe every month for software, you can't change that image anymore. And for text, that's fine. I think you can go in and make notes, but it isn't like you can convert it or make it into any other thing than a PDF. When you have file formats for images, you can go in anytime and crop it, take portraits of people out to upload to your tree. You can improve the quality of the original image if you need to. So PDF, textual, unchanging. Any of the other file formats are usually supporting visual material. So that's the difference for me.
And then, so if you had say like record that goes together, but there's multiple images, you would just,
Oh, if there are multiple, the same thing holds. If you have multiple pages,
Mhm.
it's usually going to be a PDF. And there are free apps or even websites where you can drop all the pages of a PDF and it makes one big PDF for you. So if you have a lot of things that need to line up, you can do that and make one document.
so in that case, you would recommend a PDF versus splitting up the file and making them all,
Yeah, if
yeah.
let's say that you have a 6-page family history that a great aunt did, and if it's mostly text, no images, I would scan those as PDFs and combine them so that you have one PDF with all 6 pages.
And then what if it's like a ship log with, where it's the image,
If it's the actual
where it's,
passenger list,
yeah,
yeah,
several pages.
that that's a record. To me, that's a visual thing.
Okay.
It may have words, it may have text, but it's a digitization.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so, yeah, so you would save that the name of the last name of the immigrant, the first name of the immigrant. You can say immigration, you could say passenger list, whatever rule you want to set up for something like a passenger list, um, you can do that.
Okay. And Patricia's question, what is the name of the ITPC software?
There are several out there. There are even free ones, but they don't offer many features. Um, the good news is it's still, I think, Amazon Prime Day, and the software is called Adobe Photoshop Elements. It's like a light version of Photoshop. And unless you are a graphic artist or designer, Photoshop to me is just overwhelming. I feel like I should leave my home and family and go to Tibet and study in a cave just to try to learn how to make Photoshop do all the great things it can do. I think it's overkill for genealogists, but Adobe Photoshop Elements is a lighter version and it supports metadata. And most importantly, it supports IPTC, which is a metadata schema that lets you insert information into digital image files. So again, we're talking about TIFFs, JPEGs, whatever.
And so do you have any favorite software? I heard you mention a few. There was Roots Magic, Family Tree Maker.
Well, I think it's kind of like
Go with what
life.
you like.
Everything is very complicated.
Yeah.
For clients, I usually, of course, have a tree they can see online in Ancestry, and then I either choose Roots Magic or Family Tree Maker. Each have their strengths. I really like Reunion, but it doesn't sync. But their charts are gorgeous. Their reports, not so much. So I do advise that you pick one. You can always switch if you need to by exporting to a file called a GEDCOM, GEDCOM. Um, but the thing for you to do is to go to any of, and there's probably 60 different family tree programs out there. So look for ones that have been around a long time with great support and play. They nearly all have demos where you can upload perhaps a limited number of people, or I think Roots Magic lets you just have the free basic thing. It's if you want to pay for an enhanced version, then you'd have to pay. So while there are a lot of great choices out there, you really are the only person who can answer what kind of software you want to use after you take them all for a test drive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay, and then the next questions, do you have any recommendations for converting an online tree to a paper version?
an online tree to a paper version. Um, I think that can be very tricky. You can always, here's the difficulty I see with this. Most of the make a book online companies, I'm blanking right now on the one that Costco has a deal with. Um, most of them are all about sharing photos, images of people, and they don't really handle the format of family groups or pedigree charts. And so depending on where your tree is, at Ancestry, of course, you export it to My Canvas. And I have to say, both Family Tree Maker and My Canvas used to be owned by Ancestry. And they are not software developers, so it was very unstable software. And they're not online publishers. So when they spun those off and sold them to the companies that manage them now, it greatly increased the stability and the quality. So if you're on Ancestry and you look across the top and it says publish, then it will take you to that online publisher and they just import everything in that tree that you want included. And it will import the records themselves. It will make a nice looking family group sheet with everyone's names and ages and places of birth. It really is lovely. You can make charts that way. But if you're going to distill an online tree, I wish I could tell you that other than a GEDCOM that you if you are able to download and then import into your desktop software, or going with a publishing company that specializes in genealogical information, those are kind of your choices.
Yeah, I know, I'm sure in this group, that in the show, like Finding Your Roots at the very end, they usually always supply them with just
Yes.
this massive,
Yes.
poster. And I'm always
Yeah,
just so jealous. I see it come out, I'm like, oh, I want one of those.
I do until I start thinking about the wall space.
Yeah,
That thing up. So I think it's very much a TV production kind of thing, but I suspect the company they're using is My Canvas because Ancestry is such a huge sponsor. But the
God, that's
graphics are
amazing.
lovely. I really admire everything that Henry Louis Gates does. I think I learn something every time I watch his show.
I know, I love it. It's so good.
Yeah.
Well, I don't, that was the last of the questions, unless we have
Okay.
anyone else, feel free to put it in chat or send it in the QA. Before we go, I just wanted to let everyone know, we do have a program coming up on October 24th. Our director, Kim, will interview local authors Beverly Mills and Elaine Buck about their new book, African Americans of Central New Jersey, A History of Harmony and Hostility. And registration's open for that on our website. And also to let you guys know, because the handout was a little late, we do have a link for that up on our website, and I'll make sure to send an email to everyone as well for the syllabus. And I think that's it. Let us know if you would like the recording, and we'll send you a copy. And I think that's it. Oh, let me see. We have one more question. Alan says, I see some genealogists type last names in all caps. Do you recommend that?
I do. I think it draws the eye so that it's much easier to, for my brain at least, to instantly grok who it is I'm looking at. When you do the forenames in all caps too, that kind of disappears. So the advantage of having it all in caps, and usually in any family tree software, there's a preference setting that will say, make all the surnames caps, or you can toggle it off. So this is another one that you get to decide. I just think it's very helpful.
All right, well, that's so great. And Elena asked, how would we request recording? You can email me at ckelly@penningtonlibrary.org, or you can email Kim Ha, and that's kha@penningtonlibrary.org. And that is it. And thank you, Nancy, so much for sharing your immense
Thank you,
knowledge
Charlotte.
with us. And I hope everyone
Thank
had
you.
a good
Thank you.
evening and enjoyed it as much as I did.
All right. Thanks again for asking me, and good luck.
All right. Good night, everyone.